Good afternoon, welcome to our small footprint. My name is Nyssa, and if you're new here, we are a family of 8 who live off-grid in Australia. So the current series of videos that I'm doing is our daily prep after a 6 to 8 week grocery haul. So the most recent grocery haul lasted for 8 weeks, and the one that we've just done, the plan is to get 8 weeks, but we might only get 6. We'll just have to wait and see how we go. We were very short on a lot of stuff before we did the trip, so I had to stock up a little bit, which made the shopping a little bit different than normal. So we're hoping to get 8 weeks, but we might not. We'll see how we go. So for the first 10 days or so after getting back from an 8-week shopping trip, I have to do a lot of food prep and planning to be able to make that food last, and I get a lot of questions about it. So the plan is to do daily videos that shows you how that's done. So today is day 2, and what did we get done today? We worked on the lemons. So I managed to get a whole box of lemons for $20. We did a few other things in there as well, but lemons was the name of the day today. So we got lots of lemon processing done. So come along and see what we got done. We try and buy lemons only when they're seasonally cheap. I'm not entirely sure why they were particularly cheap at the moment, because they're not really a summer fruit. Not sure, but they were, so we got them. And you can never have enough lemon juice in the freezer and things like that. So come along and see what we got done today. And yeah, enjoy. First task of the day was decanting the cold brew. So if you watched yesterday's video, you saw me make up the cold brew with the ground coffee in the coffee sock to go into the 4 litre or 1 gallon jug. So it's been steeping for about 24 hours. Preferably steep it in the fridge, but we don't have any fridge room at the moment, so we're doing it on the bench. So we just make sure that we only do it for about the 24 hour sort of mark. Once I've had it steeping, what I do is I decant it into other containers. So I use the 1/2 gallon ball mason jars. I find that they are a good size for storing in the fridge and for using. I put in about 200 mils of coconut cream. This is a tin of coconut cream that I shook mixed with water before sticking it in the fridge. Otherwise it tends to coagulate too much in the coffee, and you end up with big chunks of coconut cream in your iced coffee. So by diluting it and shaking it and emulsifying it before adding it to the coffee, that helps with that. I have homemade sugar syrup that I've put into jars that I bought with pumps. So I purposely bought these particular glass jars with the food grade pumps on them so that I could then refill them with our homemade sugar syrups to use for things like this. So it's just a heavy syrup in these jars, and we use 4 or 5 pumps. They're 7.5 ml per pump, 4 or 5 pumps per 1/2 gallon of coffee. It doesn't make it very sweet, it just takes the edge off the bitterness, which is all we're looking for, and tastes really good with the coconut cream. So I have decanted into those 2 1/2 gallon jars, and they go in the fridge, and then that way over the next couple of days we can make iced coffee by just putting a couple of ice cubes in a cup and then pouring it over the top, and we have cold brew iced coffee pre-made, and it means that we can get the kids to make it for us too. So got that done. After that I moved on to starting some food prep. Now, if you saw my grocery haul, I managed to get a 12 kilo box of bone-in skin-on chicken thighs. They come in 2 kilo bags, and some of them were still pretty well frozen, so they went back into the freezer, but some were a bit soft. So I kept 2 out to process because they just felt a bit too soft to be sticking back in the freezer. So I take the skin off, and then I take the bones out of them as well, and we use them as boneless, skinless chicken thighs. But I purposely buy them this way because I use all the bones for stock and for dog food. So they work out about $4 a kilo, which isn't particularly cheap. I was getting them for about $2 a kilo 6 months ago, but we did need some bone-in chicken, and chicken is hard to come by at the moment. So I grabbed it regardless, but when you debone it and that, I'm not particularly careful about it because I'm going to be using these bones. So the meat that you end up from 4 kilos of bone-in skin-on chicken thighs with both bones in it is not a huge amount, but it's worth it to have the other bits and pieces. It's a hard one, that one, but we do it anyway. So I deboned and skinned those and put the bones in the freezer to make stock with. I gave the dogs most of the chicken skins because they haven't had anything other than dry kibble for the past few days, so it was a nice treat for them. And then I marinated the meat. So I have a pretty standard sort of a marinade that I use for my chicken thighs. I use some minced garlic, or some garlic powder, onion powder, smoked paprika, some cowboy candy, some mustard powder, lemon juice and olive oil. Basically, that sort of is the general blend that I use for my chicken thighs. I really like the way that the cowboy candy gives the chicken a bit of a crust on it when you cook it, because it's got the sugars in it, but a bit of heat as well and flavour. I do like to marinate it and leave it for 24 hours before cooking it off, but today obviously we're using this for the current meal, so I didn't do that. So all I did was sliced it up, marinated it, and then we fry it all off in a cast iron pan. I like to put it in the pan and leave it for quite a while so that it, as I said, it gets that crust on it, and then I flip it around so that we get all those like charred bits all over it, which is how I prefer it. For breakfast, we decided to do Okinomiyaki, which is a Japanese cabbage pancake. I bought 6 cabbages. They're only $2 each. They're giant drumhead cabbages, but I didn't have enough fridge room to put them all in the fridge. So this is the one that I couldn't fit. So what I did was I just shredded it finely and then went to use it, because we really like Okinomiyaki and I've got that chicken. That's what we did. So I shredded it all up fine. I ended up using half of it for breakfast and put the other half in a bowl for later. I wasn't real sure what I was going to do with it at that point, but we didn't need to use the whole cabbage for breakfast. So Okinomiyaki has a lot of varied recipes for it, I suppose. I do a very basic one. Basically a couple of teaspoons of soy sauce, and then for about half a large cabbage, I do about 3 cups of flour, I suppose, and about 2 cups of water and 4 eggs. But it really just varies on the size of your cabbage. You want it to be sort of like a fritter batter, but not as thin. You want the cabbage to sort of hold together while you put it in the fry pan so you can fry it and flip it, but you don't want too much of that actual batter, because the cabbage is the pancake, not the batter. Like, you know, if you're having certain fritters, then you get a lot of the batter with a little bit of the filling. That's not the way this is. You want the cabbage to be the star of this. So texture wise, you want it to sort of hold together, but you don't want there to be too much liquid batter in there either. It took me a while to figure out exactly how I like it, and realistically you can have it any texture you want, but for us this was about what works for me. About half of a big head of cabbage, shredded finely, 2 or 3 teaspoons of soy sauce, about 3 cups of flour, 2 cups of water, and 4 eggs. That works out as around about what we use. I generally put about 3/4 to 1 cup of the mixture heaped into the pan, and I flatten it out and spread it out into sort of a circle type shape, and then I fry it off. We like to do it in the cast iron. You want it to cook well enough that you can flip it. You can't see any sign of it cooking though. You've got no bubbles or anything like that because there's no leavening agents in it. So you just want it to hold together, and you can see the edges of it sort of cook. And then you flip it and you cook it as much or as little as you want, realistically. We like to serve it with the marinated chicken, and then we'd normally use Kewpie mayo if we had it, but I didn't buy any because we're watching pennies and we don't really need it, so I just used homemade mayo and some of the ABC sweet soy Kikap type sauce. I still don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but it's called ABC sweet soy sauce, so we use that over the top as well. After we ate lunch or breakfast or whatever you want to count it, I started on the lemons. So for the second day in a row, I managed to commandeer Sonnet and Apollo to give me a hand. So I showed them how to gently peel off the rind off the lemons without taking any of the pith, and then cut them in half and juice them. We're using this Kmart juicer. A viewer gifted me the KitchenAid attachment, and it's wonderful, but the angle of it is a bit hard for the kids to use. So whilst this Kmart juicer is still running, we're going to keep using it, but I'd imagine that we'll kill it at some point because it's not meant to be used the amount that we do. So they did about a whole jug full of the juice for me before Apollo slipped and slightly cut a finger, and then, it was all over for the day. So I was grateful to get as much as I did out of them though. So they filled a whole jug for me. I strained the juice that they did and then kept on going for a bit to make sure that that jar was full. Not really sure exactly what I was doing with anything yet at that point, just wanting to get, some progress done. I decided to make up a few different things as I was going and assess the levels of the lemons after that. So I used the last of my vodka. I have vodka around for making extracts and stuff more than anything else, but there was the end of a bottle there that I think I used for vanilla last time. So I put about half a dozen lemon's worth of rind in a jar and just poured the vodka over the top of it. I'm going to use this either as an extract, or I'll make a simple syrup and make it into limoncello or something. I'm not sure yet, but it takes a few weeks to steep anyway. So it's in a nice dark cupboard for the moment. Then I filled 2 1-litre jars with the scraps that the kids had done with to cover with white vinegar for citrus vinegar for cleaning. So I just used whatever scraps that they had, filled the 2 1-litre jars and poured and covered it with the white vinegar, and that'll sit for a few weeks. And then we use that diluted with water to make cleaning spray. We add a little bit of peppermint oil as well to help with the mice and the flies and ants and all that sort of thing, and we use that as a cleaning spray in our kitchens and wherever else, bathrooms, whatever happens to be needing. I've got some orange stuff still at the moment, but the lemon stuff will be nice as well. So after that, I did some preserved lemons, so they're salted lemons basically. I've made these before and we really enjoy these. So you basically cut the ends off the lemons and you cut them into quarters without going all the way through. You sprinkle salt over it and then you put the lemons in the jars. So you can squish them down a little bit to release some of the juice, but you just keep on packing them in. I use the end of my rolling pin to sort of squish them down to get some juice released. If there's not enough juice to cover the whole lot, and it depends on your lemons for that very much so, then I just add some of the pre-juiced lemon juice that I've already got to make sure that the level covers all the lemons, because it's going to ferment, so it's going to bubble a bit. You need to make sure you don't put the lid on securely on this one either, because it is going to ferment a little bit, and once it's at the point where it's done fermenting, then you store it in the fridge. I like to use this for putting inside chickens when I roast chickens, but it's nice cut up in a lot of Moroccan style dishes and stuff like that as well. The flavour is wonderful. It's a really, really strong, lemony, bright flavour that loses a lot of its bitterness because of the way it's done. I'm not entirely sure about the science of it, but it works really well. So we use that for a lot of things, but stuffing chickens is a really nice way to use it. The other thing I decided to give a go was something I've seen before but haven't tried, and that's the Korean lemon Chung, or Chung, I'm not sure how it's pronounced, which is basically a sugar syrup, but you don't cook it in any way. So I made the first one with slices of lemons because I looked up a whole bunch of different style recipes of it. So first up, I sliced lemons into nice thin slices and removed all the seeds from them. You want to clean your lemons first too, of course, because you're using the skin on as well. So they say to clean it with a bit of bicarb, scrub it with a bit of salt, rinse them, that sort of thing. Slice them really nice and thin and remove all the seeds. Then you put the same weight of lemon as you do sugar. Now, everything I read said to mix that up in a bowl and leave it for a bit to start, turning into liquid, and then put it into your jars. You want to, now I don't think I would next time. I think I'd weigh out the lemons, weigh out the sugar, and then I'd probably layer it in a jar rather than that extra step of another bowl, because it was really awkward to then try and get it from that bowl into the jar. I did get to taste it though, lick my fingers a few times and wash my hands. So that's a bonus. But you put the lemon and the sugar into the jar, and basically the sugar will turn into a lemon syrup just from the lemons secreting their liquids and turning the sugar into a syrup. So you store it in a dark, cool sort of a place for 3 days apparently, and you have to rotate, like tip it upside down and things like that to make sure that the sugar is being agitated throughout the jar, and then you refrigerate it once it's open. So I'm not entirely sure what I'm going to use this for yet, but we have all these lemons and I really love lemons, so I thought it was worth giving a go. I did make a batch using some of the scrap lemons as well, because I was looking at a few recipes and they had the options to either use scraps of lemons that you'd use for other things or lemon slices. So I thought, since I have all those scraps of lemons as well, I'm going to give them a go as well. So I did a jar up with the scraps and then the jar and a half or so with the slices. It didn't work out very evenly, and I may look at topping up the jar with the scraps and the jar with the half full jar of the slices, because I do have still got quite a few lemons left to work on, so we'll see how that goes. Next thing I did was lemon ginger cordial. So it's a favorite of ours to make cordials to have with our SodaStream. Our SodaStream machine, we have an adapter for it, and we buy a 6.5 kilo CO2 canister, so it lasts us a long time and it's a lot cheaper than buying the little 400 gram canisters. So I did a big thumb of ginger diced up into the pot, about the rind and juice of 9-ish of the lemons of this size. Sally Wise does a lemon cordial recipe. It's vaguely based on that. It's about 1.5 kilos of sugar to that quantity of lemons, and then 4 cups of boiling water added to it as well. I also added some tartaric acid. Doesn't show there. So citric acid, tartaric acids, they both help with stopping it from ferment or anything like that. It's not a particularly large batch, so we will probably just store this in the fridge because it'll last a few weeks in the fridge. But depending on how many lemons I have left and things like that, I may make another batch if we like it. So the 4 cups of boiling water go in there, and then you want to put the pot on the stove, and you want to dissolve all the sugar, but you don't want it to come to a boil at all. You just want it to dissolve all the sugar. So once all the sugar's dissolved and that sort of thing, you put the lid on it and you let it steep overnight. So I just put the lid on it and put it aside for the night, and I'll strain it in the morning, and that way you're getting all the flavors from the lemon peels and stuff, all the oils and everything else from that through the liquid overnight while it sits there, and then strain it the next day. Dinner that night, we decided to do stir-fry noodles because I had that other half of cabbage. I wanted to use that other half of cabbage, and it seemed like a good thing to do. I do use cabbage in things like spring rolls and rice paper rolls and things like that, but it just really depends on what I've got out. So I buy stir-fry noodles from Aldi. We just buy sort of 2 meals worth for the whole 8 weeks, just as a nice, really simple thing. Especially when I'm in those first week and a half that I'm doing all this prep, I don't always have enough time to make fancy dinners as well. So, you know, pros and cons to all that. But we did stir-fry noodles. So all I did was I used some of that marinated chicken thigh and the other half of the cabbage, some grated carrot that I did in the cutter for the Thermomix, and that sort of stuff, just veggies in general, some broccoli and things like that. And I just cook it all off in the pan, add the noodles that we have just separated in some boiling water, and I use Recipe Tin Eats Chinese stir-fry sauce. We really like it. It's a very simple one. It's soy sauce, sesame oil, some Shaoxing wine, what else? Oyster sauce, corn flour, that sort of thing, all mixed up with a bit of water, and we pour it over the noodles, and it gives them that really shiny, slick sort of a texture, but also has that wonderful umami flavour. So that's the sauce that we use for our stir-fry noodles, or sometimes stir-fry veggies over rice and things like that. It works out really well. It's simple to make, and I always have the ingredients here for it, though I did realise that I was short on the Chinese wine, and I did use some mirin instead and didn't put any sugar in it because mirin's sweeter than Chinese wine. So you can, you know, to a degree, you can work out what's going to work for you and what flavours you like in that, but we really enjoy that. So that was today's. So there's still a fair few lemons to work on, which is the way it goes. And then what else do we have to get done? There's zucchinis that need to be done, pineapples that need to be done. There's a few bits and pieces that I'm still working on. So that was it for today, and I will see you again tomorrow with whatever it is the next thing on my task list to get done, which I think will be some baking, maybe some baking. So enjoy the rest of your day, or what night, or whatever it is that you're watching, and I will see you again tomorrow. Bye guys.